In this video, I'm going to look at a game I played last Tuesday in the semi-final of this year's Horsham Club Knockout. I had the white pieces and was up against Ian Comley. I started with e4 and black responded with c5, knight f3, e6, d4, c takes d4, knight takes d4, a6. The Khan variation of the Sicilian, one of black's most flexible lines. White played bishop d3, the main line. He delays knight c3 so as to keep open the option of playing c4, depending on black's choice of defensive system. Bishop c5. This is one of black's two most popular moves in this position, along with knight f6. Black takes the opportunity to develop his bishop actively. Knight b3, bishop a7. Black keeps his bishop on the most active diagonal. Now, here, queen g4 is white's most aggressive move. Knight f6 is black's main reply, when white has to play queen g3 with a sharp position, as queen takes g7 is bad due to rook g8, queen h6, bishop takes f2 check, and now king takes f2 is not possible because of knight g4 check winning the queen. However, after bishop a7, I decided to play the more sedate queen e2, as apart from anything else, I wasn't really that familiar with how to play the queen g4 lines. Play went knight c6, bishop e3. Swapping the dark squared bishops leaves black weak on the dark squares. Knight on g to e7. Now, bishop takes a7, rook takes a7, knight c3 was possible, but instead I decided to play the immediate knight c3. Note that white no longer wants to play c4, so it seemed time for this move. Now, black could take on e3, bishop takes e3, but after queen takes e3, white's position looks very promising. For instance, after the straightforward castles long, white's attacking position looks a lot more promising than black's, as he's far better developed and better placed to launch an attack. If instead, after queen takes e3, if instead of castling, black played d5, trying to execute this common freeing break, white can just play e takes d5. And now knight takes d5, knight takes d5, queen takes d5. Note at this point, black cannot take with the pawn due to the pin on the e-file. White now plays castles long, with a nasty discovered attack by the bishop threatened. And this really looks very bad for black. After e takes d5, if black plays the straightforward e takes d5, white can just play queen g3, avoiding the threat of d4 and hitting g7. And when black defends g7 somehow, white will castle long with a very strong attacking position. So taking on e3 with the bishop would have just helped white develop and attack. So after knight c3, black sensibly just castled, and now white did take the opportunity to take the bishop on a7, bishop takes a7, rook takes a7. This is the problem for black. After this exchange, one of his pieces is going to be at least temporarily misplaced. Now, In this position, castles long was the most straightforward move, and white can quite reasonably claim to be slightly better here, as he is better placed to attack than black. However, after rook takes a7, I came up with a different idea, which was to play e5. This is a rather double-edged move. White opens the d3-h7 diagonal for his bishop, but the e-pawn is potentially weak. He also sets a little trap into which black falls. Now, here what black should have played was knight g6, hitting the e-pawn, and pretty much forcing white to play bishop takes g6. After f takes g6, g3, queen c7, hitting the e5 pawn again, f4, d6, e takes d6, queen takes e6, d6. This would have been reasonable for black. I would have probably played knight e4 hitting the queen while reserving the decision as to where to castle. However, unfortunately for black, he fell into my trap. After e5, he played knight b4. And here I played bishop takes h7 check, king takes h7, queen e4 check, forking h7 and b4, king g8, queen takes b4. And white has won a pawn and exposed the black king a little. Play went knight c6, queen e4, b6. Black has to develop his bishop on c8 somehow. And now white has a choice as to where he castles. Castles long would have been most incisive, although white was concerned that black might get more counterplay with castling on opposite sides. So instead, he chose castles, which was the more solid option. Play went bishop b7, queen e2. White anticipates a discovered attack by the bishop on b7 against his queen. Now, d6, freeing black's position to an extent, would have been met by e takes d6, queen takes d6, rook on a to d1. And here white has an extra pawn and the more active pieces. So this wasn't terribly promising for black. After queen e2, he instead decided to put pressure on the e-pawn with queen c7. White defended it with f4. And now black's best move would have been knight e7, because he really needs to stop white from playing f5. However, instead of knight e7, he played knight b4, which is a definite error. Now, white had the chance to play direct f5 over the next few moves, but decided to build up slowly before playing it. So, for instance, f5 at once here, threatening f6, is very strong, but white played rook on a to d1. Black played rook d8. Again, white could have played f5, intending f6, but played rook d6, keeping control of things by blocking black from breaking with the d-pawn. Rook on a to a8. Black tries to bring his other rook back into the game. Again, white could have played f5 here, intending f6, but prepared things a bit further with queen f2, hitting the b6 pawn. And so black has to do something about that. And after bishop c6, white finally played f5. Here, white is threatening to play f6, so black has to do something about that. He could try f6 himself, but then queen g3 is very strong, threatening to capture on f6. For instance, e takes f5, e takes f6, and the threat of queen takes g7 mate cannot sensibly be met. Or f takes e5, f6, and again the threat of queen takes g7 mate cannot sensibly be met. Black could try rook f8, defending the f6 pawn, but then f takes e6, f takes e5, rook f7 is very strong. White threatens queen takes g7 mate, which forces rook takes f7, e takes f7 check, king takes f7, queen takes e5. White threatens rook f6 check, winning the queen. He also has a powerful attack against the exposed black king. In addition, he has an extra pawn. In short, he is winning. Now, this obviously didn't appeal to black, or perhaps he didn't even consider it, and after f5 he instead played e takes f5, which is the most direct way of stopping f6. Now, in this position, white's most incisive continuation is queen takes f5, threatening queen takes f7 check, and after rook f8, defending f7, rook f4. White is threatening both rook takes b4 and rook h4 followed by queen h7 mate, and black really doesn't have a defence against this. However, after e takes f5, white played a3 when the knight on b4 has nowhere to go. If he plays the knight to d5, white just takes it. So he decided to attempt the desperado knight takes c2, but white threw in the handy intermezzo, queen takes f5. Now black cannot allow queen takes f7 check, so he played rook f8, but now white just plays queen takes c2. Black responded with bishop a4. Perhaps he was relying on this pin, but white had foreseen the possibility, and after the simple queen d1, black has just lost further material. He played bishop takes b3, trying to grab a pawn, but it doesn't help. Queen takes b3, queen c5 check, king h1, queen takes e5, rook takes d7. White is just a piece up with pressure on f7 and b6. Black decided this was enough and resigned.